got Patti Martinez with the Spinelli Residential Group, correct?
The Spinelli Residential Group.
All right. We had them on here about 2 weeks ago, and we're getting the second half of the team on because at the end of the day, we're trying to produce some content, especially for the people who are maybe a little shy to do so, right? So before we got in here, Patti was like, I've never done anything like this. I'm not sure what to expect. And I was like, you and I are going to sit down and we're just going to chat.
All right.
So here we are. And so tell me just a little bit, Spinelli Residential, you're working with them, but you've been a real estate agent for longer than just the amount of time that you've been on their team, correct?
Right. I'm going on my second year with Spinelli Residential
Okay.
Group.
And
But
how
I've
long
been an
have you-
agent for a little over 5 years.
Okay. And so in the last 5 years, I've been kind of asking agents, what has your experience been in terms of differences from when you started until now? Is it the same industry? Is it different? I mean, what are you experiencing?
It has changed tremendously. But one of the reasons I joined Spinelli Residential Group is because I wanted to be on a team specifically.
Okay.
And I'm so glad I did that because I think I have built my business while being at Spinelli. And it's been through just being around other people that are motivating. And I've learned a lot from, Jeanette very well.
Oh, yeah.
And so she's been wonderful to
A
learn
wealth of
from.
real estate knowledge for sure.
Exactly. Lots of good guidance and lots of great education and good energy too.
I got you. So just to unpack that, I mean, the team kind of concept, for those that maybe aren't on a team or aren't even in real estate, the idea is to get these, to get this content in front of people who are maybe interested in some of the things that we do, but maybe afraid to ask. So we talked about being on a team in terms of real estate. The benefits, number one, is you're dealing with people who maybe have some more experience, knowledge, and then you kind of talked about energy and everything along those lines. What are some of the other benefits of being on a real estate team?
Well, is supporting each other.
Okay.
When someone, is not available, going out of town, going on vacation, I've got people that can back me up.
Right
and
on.
People that I know very well, that I know that are going to take really good care of my clients while I'm away.
So not only does it benefit you, but it can also benefit your clients. I mean, it's good for them to work with somebody who's on a team.
Absolutely, because we are working together to help promote our listings and help our buyers out. And we do that as a team. So you're not just hiring one agent, you're hiring a whole team of agents and supporting staff as well.
Well, and I love that because I think a lot of people feel like, hey, when I am working with a real estate agent, that's the only person that they get. But if you're dealing with somebody who's got that kind of team atmosphere, you're kind of getting the benefit of a lot of different people. And it's not just team in regards to real estate agents, but there's also other people on your team that aren't agents, correct?
Right. Like we've got a marketing specialist who that's what they do. That's what they're good at.
Okay.
So they're doing that. That's their main job, their main focus. We've got a listing person that, handles all of our listings, making sure that, all of the, when it first hits the market, it's going to shine. It's going to, we're going to have the best photographer, used to take excellent photos and make the property look really good. And
so just an entire all-around team, so that when you're working with Patti here, you're not only getting all of the knowledge and expertise that she provides, but she's got a whole team surrounding her.
I think there are like 128 steps to get a home sold. So
bet.
that's a lot for any one person to handle. So when you've got a team of experts that are going to, help accomplish that, it really is a great way to do it, because that means that I can focus on the things that I'm good at.
Yeah.
And the things that I need to handle, but there's somebody else that's like the contracts person that's going to make sure that we're not forgetting any forms, that we're doing everything legally in the right way, all those things.
Well,
and that we're hitting our milestones and our deadlines, because, there are those things to track as well.
and they're important, right?
Right.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't know that. It's interesting. It's one of the things I talk about on this podcast a lot, is that we as real estate professionals, we know what we know, and sometimes we assume everybody else does too. And then we're having these conversations, and we're getting those sound bites out there to people who are, thinking about selling or thinking about buying, and they go, "Oh my gosh, I love the idea of somebody who's got an entire team, not just of agents, but like you said, photographers. You've got people who are doing the listing stuff to make everything kind of shine when the listing first comes active. And then I know because I had one of your I don't know what to call it, but partners, if you will, on here last week, Amy Goldberg from Seamless Contracts, which they're
Right.
doing a lot of the compliance work and the transaction coordination work, and she had tons of great things to say about how they make all pun intended the transaction seamless.
Right.
So these are
Yeah.
all things that I feel like we know, but we need to make sure everybody else knows and they can see that value in
They
what you
really
offer.
take care of us, and they really take care of our clients to make sure that all those things are in order, because they're so important,
Mm-hmm.
and it's easy for something to fall through the cracks or,
Yeah.
so.
Well, one of the things I talk about on this podcast is because we want to try to, it's mainly real estate related, but we also talk to other business owners, and I try to keep it slightly entrepreneurial.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I do that is because I feel like it transitions well, because real estate agents, let's face it, you're kind of self-employed, right? So in this particular market right now, is there anything that you're currently doing, that you feel like is really helping driving traffic, whether it's buyers or sellers to your business, whether that's, Jeanette said really just following up with past clients was a big one for her. Is there anything right now that you feel like you're really doing that's working?
Well, one thing that I'm doing is I'm starting a new focus so that I can work also with my husband, who is a local architect.
Okay.
So he's been in the business long enough that some of his clients from the 80s and 90s, they're looking to downsize or build a different retirement home at just a different point in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
So those are people that I can tap into and find out if there's a way that we can work with them,
Totally.
because who knows more about their house than
Yeah. And so is this more on the building side, or, kind of tell me a little bit more about that? I would love to get him on here. We talked about it before we kind of hit record here, but because we had a builder on 2 weeks ago, and he was talking about architects that he refers and everything along those lines, and we haven't had an architect on yet.
Well, that's actually what inspired me to get into this business, is
Okay.
because I was ready to do something else, because I've been working in, living and working in Austin for over 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I've worked for state government, and I've worked for civil engineering companies.
I see.
So after having done that for so long, I just saw an opportunity, because I saw him referring clients to agents.
I gotcha.
So, and he's a real estate agent as well, but
Okay.
he doesn't practice real estate, but he does have his license.
Mm-hmm.
So I just thought that would be a good thing to do. And I was interested in, like you said, I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit.
Yep.
Entrepreneurial spirit. And so I was just ready to, go out on my own and see what I could do.
I gotcha. Well, when we're talking about some of the clients that you're bringing in, I know that you're going to want to work with any buyer or seller that's in the market here in the Austin area. But I always kind of ask somebody, if you could choose, is there a specific type of client that you like to work with, whether that's first-time home buyers or move-up buyers, or maybe you prefer listings? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, I do prefer listings.
Okay.
It's
Why
just,
is that?
It is, being able to help someone achieve that goal is very gratifying.
Mm-hmm.
And
Selling a home.
Selling a home.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like both, but I think I would prefer to have a listing.
Okay.
I shouldn't say that.
Well, again, there's no wrong answer. I just, I always say, for me personally, right? I mean,
I've had challenging experiences, and I've had good experiences with both buyers and sellers.
Okay.
So it's kind of hard to really say for sure.
Well,
But
tell me what your best experience is with a listing. How does that unpack that and say, hey, here's how it went, and here's what, if you could wave a magic wand, what would every transaction look like?
in the last 5 years, it seems like every transaction has its own challenges and its own nuances, and every deal is different.
They're like snowflakes.
I'm always exactly. They're like snowflakes.
Right.
I'm always learning something new. Different scenarios come up, and that's true on the buy side too. But
Mhm.
I think on the listing side, yeah.
Well, let's keep it relevant to like in the market right now. if you could kind of do like a public service announcement to some of your clients, what seems to be an issue or a question that you're running into right now more so than ever that, you could just say, hey, here's what I'm experiencing. Here's how we handle it.
Well, if there was a way to allay fears about interest rates
Okay.
with buyers,
Mm-hmm.
because I think there are a lot of reluctant buyers.
Okay.
And I think it's actually a really good time for buyers to be active because there is inventory,
Mm-hmm.
and there's just hasn't been, at least since I've been an agent, I don't think there's been a time when we have had the luxury to really compare and
Negotiate.
evaluate,
Right.
properties and negotiate. So I recently successfully negotiated a buy down for
Nice.
one of my buyers. So
We've been seeing a lot of those finally.
yeah. So not only we didn't have to look at too many houses, but when we were considering which one to make an offer on,
Mm-hmm.
that was one of the factors is who could we negotiate with.
Do you feel like the interest rate thing is creating issues in terms of reluctancy because people just are concerned about how high rates are, or do you feel like it's an affordability issue? And I know the answer is
It's
kind of both,
it
but are you
yeah,
seeing more one than the other?
it's definitely both. I think for some younger buyers, I think sometimes they need to be a little bit more open to different scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps you know, going in with a family member or a friend
Yeah.
to buy a property because there is an affordability issue.
Or
It's
maybe not getting that dream home as your first home.
Oh, absolutely. They've got
Right.
to be realistic
Right.
and know that this is not their forever home, but
Mm.
a home that's going to suit their needs, and hopefully they can stay in for a few years and then have some appreciation happen, and then go buy another home.
Yeah, that's the goal. I mean, do you feel like this is something I've been asking quite a few real estate agents, and I've been getting different answers, and I find it interesting. I know as a lender how I would answer this question, but as a realtor, do you feel like when buyers are buying homes that they somewhat at times have an attitude like they're going to live there forever, so they have to really, take everything into serious consideration because this is the end of their lives type of decision?
Well, that's something that we try to do, or I try to do with buyers up front when we're first starting about what the buyer process looks like, what
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be like.
Okay.
Not only do they need to get pre-approved so that they have realistic expectations about what they can afford, but also that they understand that there's not ever a perfect home. They can get pretty close, but sometimes there's homes that check off a lot of boxes, and maybe it's the 85%
Mm-hmm.
perfect home.
Right. And even when they are perfect, they never end, right? I've never met a homeowner that says it's finally done. There's always something to build or something to paint or a fence that needs to be repaired. And
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, that's always going to happen. Even if you buy a new home, there's always going to be, that's part of the fun of being a homeowner, right?
right. And so we're trying, as I said before, with the other question that I asked about, the kind of public service announcement to buyers and sellers, keeping things relevant, what seems to be, I know that you said rates. Is there anything else that seems to be a pain point for you personally in your job that you feel like, man, if we could just eliminate this or educate on this, it would make your life easier?
Well, the other pain point for buyers is having to consider living in suburbs.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wants to be, in central Austin, right where
Yeah.
the action is.
Sure.
So, and a lot of times that's just not affordable for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So having to, live in the suburbs is something that they should consider.
Well, it's interesting to hear you say that because you're right. I've had other agents. No one has said that on this podcast, but I guess, okay, just to unpack that for the person who's kind of watching this, why do you feel they obviously want to be in the city because they want to be around everything? Is it just a distance thing? Is it not cool to live in the suburbs? Like, what is your kind of take on that?
Yeah, it's kind of not cool
Okay.
sometimes, or they think it's not cool to
Right.
live in Hutto or
Because of
Cedar
the drive
Park.
time or
Probably both.
okay.
I actually had one client, I won't say her name, but she said that she was driving around looking at some homes and she saw cows and she just started crying because she had to live where there were cows.
Oh.
You know,
Well,
she was,
and then there's people that
and
want
she's
that.
this, and she's a city girl. You know, she
Mhm.
lived in Chicago, she lived in St. Louis, all these different great places, and so again, we had to go through that process and realize that this is not your forever home. You're not going to live there forever,
Right.
but at least get into a house and start building some equity. And she was a first-time home buyer too.
Yeah, that's one of the things we've been talking a lot about with first-time home buyers is the building equity thing because, one of the things that I identified in, like 2020, for example, when interest rates went really low and we were seeing multiple offers, I was seeing people that were looking to purchase properties, and you had a lot of buyers at that time that were making offers way over asking and even signing like appraisal gap waivers, which basically is in the event that the home doesn't appraise, you'll pay the difference for what you offered on the property and what the home appraises for, and it has to be in cash, right? So I had a lot of people that were trying to make these offers as first-time home buyers, and they were asking me, who the heck has all this money to make these offers and cover that appraisal gap waiver? And the answer to that was the majority of the people that were doing it were people that sold other homes and took the equity that they got from that property and utilized it for those appraisal gap waivers. And the funny thing is that I think that it's a lot of emotion, right? Where you've got people that are willing to kind of be a little more frivolous with that equity money that they accumulated because it wasn't like hard earned, right? They bought a home, they made their payments on time, and then all of a sudden 5 years goes by, they have $100,000 and they're willing to play that like money they won at a casino versus somebody who maybe saved up for 5 years and has 50, 60, $100,000 and they're like, oh, I don't want to part with all of this. And so the moral of the story is that when interest rates reduce, we're all pretty confident that it's going to get crazy again. People are going to be coming out of the woodwork to make offers on these properties. And so the people who have bought even 2 or 3 years ago for the first time, if they felt like they overpaid, are now going to have that additional equity to kind of play around with, in the next round, even if they didn't buy the home of their dreams or had to live out by cows, as you said. And I feel like that's one message that I know I'm having a really difficult time getting across, is that's why buying right now, if you don't own, is so important. I mean,
I think having gone through that experience and being able to share those stories with
mhm,
people is something that we can offer.
yeah.
Because now that we've gone through that, we have that knowledge and that experience
Well, and it's easy
and
to
we can
say,
we can inform people
yeah.
as much as we can, and then it's up to them. But
hmm
yeah.
So outside of all of the real estate stuff, typically one of the things I always ask is, we've talked about a little bit about rates, but is there anything lending wise that you have questions on? You're sitting in front of a lender. Is there anything I can answer for you?
Um, I'm not sure, Matt. I didn't come prepared with that kind of a question.
That's okay. I've got a ton of other questions I can ask, but a lot of times once I get through like halfway, people are kind of like, hey, I've got a couple questions for you. But you're good.
I'll give that some thought as we're talking.
Very good. So one of the things I wanted to ask just to kind of help with, creating some of the content for you, is there a particular area in Austin that you either like to be, doing business in or that you prefer to do business in, or are you just willing to go anywhere?
Well, I'm a South Austin girl.
Okay.
So I've just lived in South Austin for a long time, and I really like South Austin. It's not to say that I'm not willing to, go to Round Rock or Cedar Park or North Austin.
Sure.
That's not true, but it's just where I'm comfortable, and I've just spent a lot of time, and where I owned a home for a long time, where my kids grew up. And
Okay.
so
So on the buy side, I mean, obviously you're willing to go anywhere